The Pitt County Board of Commissioners meeting will begin in 10 seconds.
Good morning and welcome to the Pitt County Board of Commissioners meeting, those of you who are at home and those of you who are here in our auditorium. I'll call our meeting to order and we'll do our roll call, please, Commissioners.
Reset.
Pushed it twice.
Mash it two times because I
pressed
had it
mine.
Mine,
two times.
mine didn't do it till the third time.
Make sure they're on. It's the bottom right button. Just press the bottom right
Ah,
button.
it's very important.
Okay,
Thank you.
press your bottom right button there. There we go. We're all here, as we can see, and now it's official.
All turned on.
Okay, we'll have our invocation by Commissioner McLaughlin and our invocation by Ann Huggins. If you'll stand, please. Did I do the opposite?
Yeah.
Okay, however y'all want to do it.
Dear Lord, we thank you for this day. We ask your blessing upon this meeting and upon us who are having to make decisions. We pray that our decision will be in the best interests of the citizens of Pitt County. These in our blessing we ask in your Son Jesus' name. Say amen.
Amen.
Please pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
motion to approve the agenda.
We have a motion to approve the agenda. Is there a
Madam
second?
Chair, I have a, before we approve the agenda, I have a motion to remove item 9 under the heading Items for Decision, Appointments to the Pitt County Development Commission. We have in our packet a purported letter from the PCDC Board Chair with recommendations. This recommendation has not been made by board action, and it's not coming from staff, so I ask that this item be removed from the agenda today and then be brought back at our regular meeting in August.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, let's vote.
I have a question. I have a question.
Okay, we have a question.
Yes, Ann?
Okay, you said it's in our packet coming from the Development Commission. This is so quick, so I'm
Sorry.
Page 94.
And I'll expand on it a little bit.
This is usually, let's let Ann finish her
Sure.
question, if you
Yeah.
don't mind, Chris.
Sure.
And I think what she's referring to is that what we have received in the past relative to appointments is what we got in our packet. So
Right, that's my question. And if this has not gone through the proper procedures, why did we receive it to be put into our package? The questions may need to go to the manager.
Correct. The history on this is the former director, Wanda Uhas, would write a letter to the Board of Commissioners as the executive director of the Development Commission, putting forth potential candidates for the Development Commission seats. You had a letter from her on March 25th, and then when she left, a revised letter came then from the chair, Randy Walters. Since there was no actual director, the chairman actually wrote the revised letter. And when Ms. Uhas would write the letter was coming from the point of view of staff. I think it could be interpreted that when the chair wrote the letter, it was coming, maybe represented by the actual commission itself, is the kind of the confusion.
And this has not been a problem in the past?
When Ms. Uhas would write the letter, no. The difference is now that came under the signature of the chairman, Randy Walters.
Because we don't have a
Let-
head.
And,
Let me, maybe if I can shed a little light on
Okay.
this. I sit on this board.
yeah.
And on March 25th, Ms. Uhas, in her report, spoke to our board about approving and improving diversity on the Development Commission and put up Glorstein Brown and Ms. Denisha Harris for appointment to the commission. The commission gave informal consent to that at a regular meeting of the commission. And it was my assumption when it became clear that we would be going through those appointments at this meeting, that we would be appointing those two individuals that had been brought before the Development Commission. This letter that was received, I guess, by staff or dated May 31st, had not been brought before the Development Commission, nor had it been made an action to be brought before the commission, which you would think, if that were to be the case, that the board chair would bring it. Ms. Denisha Harris, who's a young African-American leader in our community, very strong leader with support from NC Civil and other organizations to be appointed to the commission, was removed in this letter and replaced by Edward Dennis. I don't know Mr. Dennis, haven't been briefed on Mr. Dennis, hasn't been brought before the Development Commission. This is the first we've seen of it. And so I ask simply, and I've consulted with the Development Commission staff on this morning. They agree that it would be appropriate to bring it back at the next meeting after there's a chance to clear up any communication problems. Ms. Harris had not been notified that she would be replaced as a nominee. So I think it's entirely inappropriate that we take action on this now. And that if the board chair does speak for the commission, I think this ought to be the case for any commission. If a board chair of any commission speaks, then they need to speak on behalf of the board, not on behalf of staff. If this had been from Kelly Andrews or Brad Hufford, then I think that we could take it as a commission as a word from the staff. But this is not a word from the staff. This is a word from the board chair and sold as a nomination from the full commission, and it's just simply not.
Well, I understand your concern, but you speak of diversity, and I believe Glorstein Brown, represent an African-American
does.
community and from Bethel. I don't know Edward Dennis, but it may be that there is diversity on there, but there is a...
Well, I'll sit in that room and I'll tell you that there could be more diversity in that room. And that having Denisha Harris there, a young African-American woman, would be an added benefit.
So
and that was what was before our commission and was the nomination. And this was done without consulting of our commission. And frankly, the first I'd seen this letter was in review of this packet this week, which I think is inappropriate.
Okay. All right.
Ms. Belsher, I think, considering all the facts and listening to our representative on the Development Commission, I think it's only right to do what's right, to table this matter and get it cleared until we can have this matter expedited in the right manner. So I concur with Kristen on the recommendation.
Okay, let's vote, the three of us that have it.
And we're voting on his recommendation to table,
Yes.
bring it back in August. So we vote yes, and we can bring it back in August.
Yes.
Yes, so the motion, despite your title on your screen that says approval of the agenda, the motion that's being voted on is the change to remove item 9 from items decision from your agenda.
Thank you, Madam Attorney.
Did we also decide to move with the presentations too?
I don't believe we have.
We're just waiting until they come.
Yeah.
If that's,
So we'll adjust the agenda?
yeah,
when
we'll
they
just
come?
adjust as we move through. When they get here, we'll stop and make the awards.
Okay.
Okay, with that, we need to vote on the agenda, correct?
Correct.
As amended.
Move to approve as
Is there
amended.
a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor or not, vote, please.
This without item 9.
Okay, the next thing on our agenda is the recognition of the Farmville Central Girls Varsity Basketball Team and the Boys Varsity Basketball Team. I don't think anyone's outside yet, or are they? No? Okay. So we'll just move along, and if they come or get here, we will,
Very good.
stop proceedings and pick it up. Okay, we put them first because we knew we were gonna have we usually have a nice group of people at 9. Okay, we have James Rhodes up next.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. We have one rezoning for your consideration this morning. This is from Baldwin and Associates for Happy Trail Farm. This is a request to rezone over 28 acres that's owned by Happy Trail Farms. This is located, I'll show you a map in just a minute. It's on the southern side of NC 33 West. It's inside the loop of Martin Luther King Boulevard, parcel 2393, and it is a request to go from rural residential to general commercial. As you can tell by the map here, this is right on the edge of the city of Greenville's extraterritorial jurisdiction. This is Old River Road. Here's the interchange with Martin Luther King Boulevard. You may recall, just to orient you a little bit better, we just dealt with a sand mine right here on this particular parcel probably 2 to 3 months ago. So again, here's the parcel in question, 28 acres in total of the 40-some that's on the entire parcel. Existing land uses in the area, and again, we do our existing land use survey just within our planning jurisdiction. I'll show you some other information from the city of Greenville in a minute. But you can see near this area, primarily undeveloped land. There are a few other small commercial, veterans office here, a church here, very sparsely developed in this particular area, except for the residential that's within the ETJ here in the city. This is what you'll be hearing more about as far as recommendations go in a minute. Here's our land use plan. Not surprisingly, here at the interchange of Martin Luther King Boulevard and NC 33 West is a node of commercial. We recognize that as being appropriate at that area. But as you see, as you grow out from that on back into the city of Greenville and out in the other directions, we believe it's better suited for some type of residential. And again, 28 acres designated by the yellow hatched line here is the area that's considered for rezoning today. So back to our land use plan. In this particular land use plan, it is shown as suburban residential, and it's intended for primarily residential uses and, where appropriate, some other types in the development pattern with meeting locational criteria. That locational criteria includes frontage and access to a major state highway or secondary road, and it is typically at a major intersection, and its proximity is to similar uses, or it has a spatial separation from those non-compatible uses, such as existing residential uses. Land designated as suburban residential is distinguished by a greater potential for development in the future. Also, just to make you aware, I know there have been discussions in the past about traffic and how it actually is, how it impacts certain areas. This is an average daily traffic count map from the Department of Transportation. Here's the parcel in question right in this area, and you can see the average daily traffic count's about 4,300 there, as compared on the Martin Luther King Boulevard area is about 15,000 per day. So that'll give you an idea. Also on the opposite side, heading back toward Tarboro, You can see a lot of people take this bypass around and move off if they're going in that direction. The ADT is almost doubled as you're heading back out toward Belvoir. So that's a reading of about 8,900 heading that direction. So again, right here, very close to the parcel in question is about 4,300 per day. There is a little sliver, you might have noticed, darker green area. That's the agriculture, open space, and natural resource area. That area has been actually excluded from the rezoning today. It is part of the parent parcel. That area is primarily in the floodplain, the 100-year floodplain. And here's our zoning map, and you can see primarily in this area it's all rural residential, one small commercial site, that being the veterinarian clinic there, closer to the interchange. And outside of that, the larger, darker green areas are areas that currently have sand mining operations located there. Give you a little bit more insight as far as the city of Greenville, generally surrounding the entire area too. There are residential districts, RA20, very comparable to our rural residential zoning, and that's primarily what you see in this triangular area here made by State and House Road and NC33, as well as those developments that come off of Old River Road and come to the rear of this property. All of that is residential. The yellow here is actually residential, also designated as a manufactured home housing area. The general commercial district, and that is the intended request for today. It's a district primarily intended to accommodate a range of retail, service, office, limited wholesale, and moderately density multifamily residential uses. So as far as our zoning ordinance is concerned, again, very general as compared to that of the city of Greenville. We have only a handful of non-residential zoning districts. So in our general commercial district, it has a long laundry list of different uses that would be allowed. Planning staff has discussed this particular request with the owner and his agent. We believe that is not consistent based on information I've just presented to you with our land use plan, and primarily because it's not in close proximity to existing large-scale commercial development and does not provide the spatial separation needed. Do not believe it's reasonable given the size of the requested area, and again, the only other commercial area in that roadway is about an acre of land for the veterinarian clinic. Do not believe it's in the best for public interest as well, due to its large scale. This information was shared and the request was shared with the planning board last month, and the board also voted unanimously for denial of the request and did not believe it was reasonable or in public interest. So with that, today, Madam Chair, our recommendation stands for denial, and with that, we'd like for you to open the public hearing.
Okay, I'll declare the public hearing open on the Happy Trail Farms rezoning. Do we have anybody signed up?
Yes, we do. We have Mike Baldwin. Will come forward, please.
Okey-doke. Hi, Mike.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson and Commissioners. My name's Mike Baldwin, and I represent Mr. Woody Witchard, who is the manager of Happy Trail Farms. Woody's been a long life resident of Pitt County. He went to Rose High School, and he's been here trying to develop and invest. Could you pass these out? I've got a handout that's coming out to you that we'll explain once it gets around, but I know my time is limited, so I want to be talking while she's handing out. One thing James and I and the planning staff agree on is that Martin Luther King Highway and NC33 is a commercial node. But what you have at commercial nodes is you've got extensions of commercial development beyond the commercial nodes. And I've given y'all a handout, and I've gone to commercial nodes in Greenville. Commercial node number 1 is at the intersection of Charles Boulevard and Fire Tower Road. That's a commercial node. You got Walgreens, you got a McDonald's. You go a half a mile and you have commercial zone property for a half a mile to the east toward Newbern. Commercial node number 2 is at Portertown Road and 10th Street, NC 33, the same road that this is on. You've got, obviously that's a commercial node there. You go 0.85 miles towards Simpson and you still have commercial property. Matter of fact, some of that commercial property is in the county's jurisdiction. Quality Collision East and the buildings that Don Spate developed, as well as Greenville owning. Then you've got commercial node number 3, which is at the intersection of Greenville Boulevard and 10th Street, right there at Hastings Ford. You go 0.4 of a mile to the east and you still have commercial zoning. So it's a commercial node is right there at the intersection. Commercial extends outward, especially when you have thoroughfares such as 33. Commercial node number 4 is out at the Speedway where you turn on 264 to go to Washington. You go east 0.85 miles while still having commercial property. And then the last one is near this site, or nearer than any of the others. You've got Peden's Grill, which is the commercial node, and you go along 33 west 0.5 miles and you still have commercial property. So that's the pattern that has been set in Greenville. It works. It's transitional zoning. Woody sent out letters to all the people that the planning staff sent out, describing himself, telling them about himself, and what he plans to do with the property. He's had 11 calls, one of them negative. One over the weekend, as a matter of fact, of Mr. James Heath. We had nobody in opposition at the planning board. The fact that NC 33, it goes right into the industrial park. The fact that it doesn't have is quite as much traffic, or 50% of the traffic that outside Martin Luther King Boulevard, is a good thing, because our traffic now, our street or roadway, Highway 33, is not overburdened. So what a great opportunity to have a commercial use on there. We have, with the size of this tract, we have the opportunity. Mr. Richards puts, if you'll look on your rezoning map that we submitted, he put buffers along the rear and the east of the property. 200 feet off the east and a whole bunch of feet off the south to buffer those properties. One of the recommendations was by planning staff to get this property, the rezoning, out of the floodplain. So that's what we did. As the fact that there's no large-scale commercial out there is because there's the veterinarian clinic, the McMillan zone. I think it's McMillan. You've got to start large-scale commercial before you can have large-scale commercial. So I think I've given you 5 nodes. I've given you 5 nodes in Greenville, and perfect examples of what we're asking for. Our dimension goes out 0.6 of a mile. So we fall right in the median of the examples that I've gave y'all. This is a true representation of how Greenville has been planned and grown. I'll be glad to answer your questions.
Thank you. When we open the discussion, we'll call you back up.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
Okay, anyone else?
No, ma'am, that's all we have signed up.
Okay, is there anyone who didn't get a chance to sign up? Okay, we'll declare the public hearing closed. The board, what's your pleasure?
I would like to.
Okay, and then Ann. Mary?
Thank you. This property that's is under request is in District 2. District 2 is underrepresented on the planning board. District 2 is, well, that was a big discussion today. But I checked the land use planning, and I'm getting off my little spot, so I wrote it down so I can be on T. We are the most underdeveloped district, in my opinion, in this county. And I am the only county commissioner who live in the district. This is the first time, I believe, colleagues, that we've had the opportunity to consider any kind of development for residential commerce in the area. We've already had one particular commercial property to be designated to close down. No, I went to the area. It was hot, and I knocked on the doors right across from the property in question. I knocked on the doors in every one of that neighborhood that would open the door right across from Highway 33 in the site area that's under question. And I did not focus my question on whether or not you want development. I just said you received a letter. Yes, I did. How do you feel about the letter? This is the opportunity to initiate some commercial property in our district. What are your feelings? That's basically what the questionnaire was. And I was making the notes as the person knocked on the door because I wanted to hear. I felt good because I was in tune with what the district wanted. We want development in the area, and we want commercial development that would be beneficial for residents. We don't want nightclubs. There are two, we're the gold mine for the sand. There are 2 pits that we have approved, and one is closing within 1 mile of each other. And we understand the need for sand pits. We understand that need. And so we don't want the sand pit. That was one of the others that the district said. And some of the residents talked about other things that they're talking about putting over there, like Greenville want to put a dump site or something. And I said I had no knowledge of that. I'm very straightforward with the residents, and I'm also someone who communicates with them. And this is one of the reasons I provide constituency services. And I'm not going to be long drawn out, but I want you to know that the residents would be happy to receive a very widespread comment was any kind of commercial development that would cut down the drive for the residents. That reduces our budget access, and it helps them gain some of the properties some of the things that they need for their home. What they wanted, what they like to see, Dollar Tree, auto parts store. They talked about drugstore. They talked about banks. And I'm not being unrealistic. I'm telling you what the residents said. If we're going to have commercial development, we have to extend the commercial property line. And we have to also, in the land use plan that I left in the car, I wrote down my notes for the 2030 land use plan objective. It says, encourage future development in an area nearest existing other currently developed areas to yield a more compact development pattern to reduce the sprawl. Now, this area is very compact. It is very close to residents. It is already, the store that's closed now next to Brown Chapel Church some time ago was Will Hardy Barbecue Pit. Macmillan Animal Clinic come in the later years. We like that. We take the dogs to the vet. We use that vet. We like having so if commerce is there, we could use it. It would benefit us. It would help our budgets. I also am very supportive of farmland, Madam Chair, because we need to feed the families, and our gardens are very important. I've not seen much more than soybeans being on that property. So this property that is zoned and being requested for general use would greatly help the residents. On page 2-2 is what I just read of the land use plan, and on page 2-3, the implementation for new public facilities and improving proposed private development. This is, in my opinion, a private developer wanting to give residential opportunity to have some commercial development. Objective number 4 encourages a balance of new, get my page right, growth and development to occur throughout the county to ensure a more balanced pattern of growth. On page 2-4, the land use for commercial allows for a variety of land uses and is sensitive to environmental and social concerns. Boy, do we have them. Maximizing accessibility among living, working, and the shopping area. That would take care of that. And I was looking for what the residents told me, and these things are in the land use plan. On land use plan page 2-6, you encourage commercial establishment to provide necessary goods and service to area residents. I think that would hit it on the head. All these things, and I didn't go all into looking, I just looked at the goals and objectives for growth and development. And this is what this developer wants, this is what the residents want, and I certainly concur with the residents. And if we're ever gonna help people who wants it, we need to start doing that. And I just am appalled that you couldn't find a way to help us get commercial development in an area that have very little development and is vastly supporting all of the industrial sites. And even the people in the industrial sites won't be able to have many restaurants. Restaurant was another one. Matter of fact, one of the residents said, we want a steakhouse. Well, I didn't say commercialized for a steakhouse, but we do need commercial development to support the residents who have great need to enhance their budgets and make it better and more accessible for the residents who have very little and have to drive a long way to get things. That's my speech for today, my sermon that I normally give.
Okay,
And I thank you for your kindness,
can I hold you to
Madam
that?
Chairman.
No, that's fine. All right, and then I'll have calling you, Chris. Anyone else? Okay.
I guess this question is for James. If we change this, and you all are not recommending a change, what are the effects of this for the future?
I'd like for you to speak up, Madam Chair, so I can hear,
Okay,
Madam
I'm not
Madam
talking,
Commissioner.
but,
I can't hear. She's
Ms.
talking
Huggins.
very low. I know she's talking
We
to
got
Mr.
it.
James, but I want to hear.
Okay.
I want to know the effect of this change, for the future.
Couple of things, with the new state legislation that's in effect, if this rezoning goes through, we'll be working with legal staff. Number one, they'll have to give you a different type of sign-off today as far as being compatible with the land use plan. Second to that, it will change the land use plan. That is now a requirement of state legislation that anytime you go against the current land use plan, especially at this scale, we'll automatically have to go back and change that. This is the first time we've been through that process. It'll be a discussion as to how we need to do that, whether that entails a different public hearing or not, but that is the first effect to the land use plan. As far as the zoning, all the things that Ms. Perkins-Williams has mentioned, I think would fit nicely within 5 acres. 28 acres is a large area. If you've been past this site, it's a large farm field. We just don't feel like it is needed in that neighborhood. 28 acres is just an expansive area that would be years in the horizon before it would develop, in my opinion. So with that, our land use plan or our zoning ordinance that I've mentioned, we've got a long laundry list of different commercial uses. So all the things that Commissioner Perkins-Williams has mentioned are allowed in there, and about 100 more. And those would all be allowed just through a simple zoning permit through our office. There are some that would require a conditional use permit that might come back to you, but most of them are handled straight through as a zoning permit.
So am I to understand that, that we could handle businesses through the zoning permit versus changing this? Is
No,
that what
ma'am.
you said?
The rezoning has to come before we can issue a zoning permit to
permit,
allow
okay.
the commercial use.
Okay. Now, my question to the owner, how did he come by to decide on this area to put your business? Did you have other areas that you looked at?
Well, first of all, I'm not the owner.
And you
I'm
represent.
the owner's representative. He, I don't know how long he's had this property. He's had it, I think, a couple of years, and saw it as, you know, obviously when you've got 2 major intersections, when you got Martin Luther King Boulevard or bypass, and you've got Highway 33, it makes sense for, again, I don't want to beat the dead horse about the commercial node and the extensions of the commercial node, but it made sense to him for that. And apparently it makes sense to the residents out there because what Miss Mary said, as well as the phone calls he's had and the nobody has shown up in opposition. And regarding the being contrary to the land use plan, James is correct, but there is no special, it happens, I'm at city council a lot, and a few times where the request is in contradiction to the land use plan. And it takes no, I mean, there is some special wording that y'all have to say, but it doesn't take a special meeting or anything to do that.
Okay.
I didn't mean to mix it all up, but I'm only limited to 3 minutes when I get up here and talk, so I gotta.
Well, when you answer questions, you have longer.
Yeah, okay. So I
But
gotta
we're not
take advantage of
encouraging
a few
that.
minutes, Ms. Huggins.
Okay, okay. I think that's fine for
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
My next question, I guess, would be to our attorney. You know, speaking from what James said, we would have to do if we change this.
So if the board decides to allow the rezoning request, you would have to develop your own consistency statement that would need to support your rezoning. Because typically when it comes to you with the recommendation of the planning board, it comes to you with a consistency statement. The consistency statement that's in your packet now on page, it's numbered page 6, does not find it to be consistent. So if you were to approve this, I would need the factual basis upon which you find it to be consistent with the existing land use plan. And that could be any number of things based upon the conversation or the information that you've heard this morning. And then in terms of modifying the land use plan, if the board decides to rezone this property, then we will have to modify the land use plan to be in accordance with this board's action.
Okay. I'm finished, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dave.
I have one question.
Chris?
Go ahead, you go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I have questions for Mr. Baldwin, applicant.
Yes, sir.
Morning, Mike, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. So we've heard this a large parcel seems to be one of the hang-ups from planning staff, that it is a large parcel. What conversations has the owner had with the county staff about maybe workarounds, kind of taking a phased approach to development of this parcel? Maybe one, two, 3, 4 phases, to maybe bite at it a little bit smaller to get it to where it's a little bit more compatible with I guess, the end goal of being a little more incremental, which is what I'm hearing from staff.
Well, Mr. Nunnally, and I appreciate the question. The owner, Woody Witcher, did meet with, James, did he meet with you or with your? He met with James early on, and James was the one who instrumented, let's leave a buffer for the floodplain. And then, I think, James, make sure I'm telling you right, was that y'all also discussed the buffer off the
Well, I
eastern
guess
part of the
I don't want to get too far afield. I guess my question is the owner open to taking a more phased approach to the development? Just getting down to the brass tacks of it. I mean, this is a 28-acre parcel. If we have a problem as a commission approving a 28-acre parcel, is the owner open to taking a more phased approach to development of the parcel?
I would think so. I'm not at liberty,
Sure. I mean,
anytime, you're asking, is there a give and take? It would be very stubborn on our end and very short-sighted on our end to say, no, there's not any give and take. I would think there would be some give and take, Mr. Nunnally. Right up here this morning, that was something maybe that we could continue, or Ms. Gallagher, how would be the best way to handle that?
You could postpone we only have the one meeting in July. So if you postpone this to your next meeting, it would be your first meeting in August. If there was, though, a phased approach, I defer to James, would that be a new application? Because it's essentially a new plan that would have to be re-advertised and re-noticed. And so the board would, if you were not inclined to do the 28 acres today, you would deny today's request, and there would be an opportunity to come in with a different plan for a future meeting.
And there would be time to do that between now and then.
Yes, well, you'd run it through the planning board again for the smaller. So it actually, that being the case, it would not come to your first meeting in August. It would come, because it would have to run through planning board first, it would come here in September.
Okay.
So it would delay the developer's progress on the rezoning, and it would cost the developer another application for consideration. But that's an alternative.
Okay. And then I guess the last question, then I have a couple for James, but what does the developer want to do with the parcel?
He,
And can I?
And I know that
Stop.
I know that bears maybe no relevance to the zoning question.
Mr. Nunnally, he,
Before you answer, if I may just interrupt, just from the legal perspective, I want the full balance of the board to know that under the law, we cannot know, nor can you consider the use in making your decision. It doesn't necessarily stop you from asking the question, but sometimes when you ask that question and an answer is provided, I'll just caution this board not to use that as a basis for your consideration. So I think you can answer the question. I just want the board to, if you still want to ask it, I just want the board to know that you cannot consider that use. And the reason for that is because if he says, I want to put a sheets on the property, you can't hold him to that. He can go ahead and put anything else that he wants to put on the property. And so that's why the law says you can't consider the use within the range of all commercial uses. So I just caution you, if he answers that question, not to consider it in making your decision.
I'll retract the question.
okay, thank you.
Do you have other
But I was ready
questions?
to answer.
I do for Mr. Rose.
James, if you'll come forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. James, I know that planning, you're aware that the north of the river does suffer from a lot of deserts, in both commercial food deserts and really a lack of mixed use. And I guess my concern when I see the map, I see a lot of suburban residential and I see a lot of residential. What I don't see are a lot of opportunities for I guess, to echo Mary's saying, is opportunities for commercial development. I'm hearing from you that there may be a chance to go more piecemeal approach to maybe start to pick off some of those parcels for the residents. My question is do you see a way forward for this developer to take a different approach to maybe meet some of those goals that are stated to create a more dense, packed, mixed-use development, so where they're not squelching commercial development whole hog, so to speak, in the county, but allowing it to happen so that residents are also not put out of having access to these resources?
I think similar to what Mike said, we'd be willing to entertain that. Again, we feel like this is simply neighborhood commercial, small-scale neighborhood commercial for just those few those few residential areas there. There may be some spillover from that commercial node. Some of the comments were made, gave me the assumption that there was already commercial at the major node and it spills out. We don't have that. That would be a logical extension at that point in time. But when there is no commercial there at the node of Martin Luther King and NC 33, I don't really buy that extension or transition zoning. What I could go along with is some small-scale neighborhood commercial. How much acreage that is, we would need to talk further.
So if the developer were to come back with a phased approach, say it does go bonkers like he's indicating, it's going to be a really, really hot item for the community and opportunity to develop a lot of different spaces. If the developer came back with an extended site plan where they had phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4 that we could look at, and phase 1 would you say a 5 or 10 acre parcel be a more reasonable approach?
I would say a 5 acre would be considered appropriate.
What's the so if a grocery store were to go in, how big of a parcel would that need to go in?
Depends on the type.
So say a food line.
Typically less than 5.
So maybe the food line. Let's take just as an example the development right on the node right at Farmville, right off the exit there at 258. That node there where Bojangles, you've got the Speedway and the food line. About how many acres would that be?
That, with those extra add-ons and Speedway, it's probably getting closer to 10 acres.
Okay.
But again, that's right at the node.
Sure.
And we're all about right at the node. It's just this extension out with it not being any development at the node itself.
Is that it?
Yes, ma'am.
I have
Thank
a question.
I've got other people. Since you've already spoken, I have to wait for you.
All right.
Melvin, you're
Thank you.
next.
Jay, can you speak to the 5 commercial nodes that was outlined by Mr. Baldwin a few minutes ago? And this is the first time I've seen the planning board and the planning staff to deny a situation. That's not the first time, but in a long time, and that we reverse it. However, I concur that there's a need for more development over north of the river. And listening, as I just commented, and listening to what has been said, it sounds like if it was presented at a more of a smaller scale development, it may have been looked at it differently. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Well, going back to the examples that were given by Mr. Baldwin, I really don't see the comparison here. Those are all on 5-lane facilities. They're major commercial nodes within the city, on sewer, got a lot of different infrastructure than what we are dealing with out here on the 2-lane road. So I think I can see the development pattern he speaks of, but this intersection does not compare to that. in my opinion. As far as scaling back to a smaller, more neighborhood-type commercial area, I think that could be appropriate there. And if it is as hot as I've heard that type of development's going to be in that area, certainly we need to look back at our land use plan. We've not witnessed that yet. So our land use plan pretty much stays as it is until we start seeing those development pressures. New highways coming in, new, such as Southwest Bypass, a new sewer line. Those types of things are usually the drivers that get us back into the land use planning process and bring those recommendations back to you.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else new? Okay, Mary and then Ann.
When you discuss extending commercial properties, and you're talking about development, are you talking about the facility itself, or are you including parking
Altogether.
altogether? Well, most of the residents who are female were talking about Dollar Tree, and the Dollar Tree I use is right down here on Memorial Drive, and we can barely get a parking space on that property. Dollar Tree, auto parts, most of the men said auto parts place. Mr. James, I'm very sensitive to what the plan, the land use plan. But if ever we in the northern part of the Pitt County, which is all of the properties north of the Tar River, we're already told, your land flood, your land flood. This land is appropriate. This land is, we were there when the water came for Floyd, which is more than it was for Matthew, around the edges where the canal was, yes. But this land did not flood as others. We have to accept the private perspective of the people who own the land to have development of any type. We dearly need it, and it is a dire for a budget. Somehow or another, I found easily 4 objectives, 4 in growth and development out of the 6, 2 would address what the residents are wanting. And I am asking this board, as a living resident of the district, does not live south of the river at all. We direly need it. Our family will be supported if we had it. And surely this is not a complaining area. They accept all of the ponds, the sand digging. We have accepted almost everything without complaint. We are asking for this commercial property request to be approved. I know I want it, and they've told me that they want it. So I'm just delighted that a private landowner is trying to meet our needs. And I just want to know that about the parking. And I think the parking space would take up a whole lot of the extra. I wish we could zone the whole 40 acres. Then maybe we could park our mule. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ann.
Okay. I'm sensitive to the residents and to my colleague over there that lives north of the river, and this is her district. I'm sensitive to that idea and wanting to have some development over there. But I'm also sensitive to our land use plan, and that we have the land use plan for a reason. If we're going to ask the committee to look at requests that come to us, come to the county, rather, and then ask them to forward on to the Board of Commissioners, then we have to have some faith in what they do for us. I heard you say, James, that right now, there's nothing that drives us to look at our land use, comprehensive land use plan. So, my opinion is that this request does not warrant us to do the things that we need to do, according to our attorney, to change that at this time. So I would like to make a motion that we deny this, bring it back to us, and ask the owner if he will accept a smaller portion to this, so that at least we will be able to help or to satisfy the residents north of the river, and still stay within our comprehensive land use plan.
I second that.
Okay, we've got a second, a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I have one other
Okay.
question to our
Okay.
attorney.
Okay, can I do Melvin first and then you? Okay.
I was more, and I hear exactly what Commissioner Huggins is saying, but I was thinking more in line of tabling this request until such time it can be brought to on a smaller scale, and give you time to, your staff time to look into developing that aspect of it. And it sounds like to me that on a smaller scale, this could be possibly what we need to do. Is that?
I think it's the same effect,
Madam Attorney,
Madam
which
Attorney.
direction?
In your timeframes, right?
still the same effect. Go back to the planning board.
Either way.
It'll still go back to the planning board either way. From my perspective, the cleanest thing is either to deny it or to table it. Unless the planning director has a different perspective, my thought would be that you either, if you deny it with a message to the landowner that he is welcome to come back with an alternate proposal, he can always do that. I'm always leery about directing or advising the landowner that he has to come back and do anything. If he comes back and submits another plan, that will cost him the dollars to do a new plan and to make a new application. And so from that perspective, I think if it's denied, any landowner knows they can come back with an alternate proposal to seek that it be accepted. If you don't wish to deny it, I think you could table it, and at some point in the future, you'll have to act on it. And there's a time frame that's not coming to me at the very moment.
But if it's tabled, it would be the same request coming back, is the way I would view it. And we're looking at something to be scaled back.
That's right, that's right. If you table it, you're still gonna be considering the 28 acres when it does come back.
So if you table it, the timeframe would be expanded even further beyond September, because you'd have to bring it back then to
Yes.
have the action on it. So the motion on the table, if that's the board's desire, is probably the most efficient.
Say that again?
The motion on the table is probably the most efficient if you want it to be brought back in a smaller scale.
Yes, the motion to deny would result in a quicker turnaround time for the applicant if he chooses to bring it back at a smaller scale.
Janice, if we were to table, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
If we were to table and the landowner went back with the planning department, came up with a contemporaneous plan, what would keep us from considering, we've already had the public hearing for this one, considering this one directly before, if there seems to be another plan in place, would there be any, I guess, procedural problem with handling the two contemporaneous?
I think there would be.
Okay.
Because changing it from 28 acres to 5 acres would require additional notice. I think it would be a sufficiently different plan, even though it's the same parcel. And our practice in the past has been when there's a significant difference. So if it was something very minor, For example, he moved it from 28 acres to 27.5 acres. I think for argument's sake, you could use it within the same application, but going to a significant either phased approach or a much smaller approach would require that's substantially different. That would trigger new notice to all of the homeowners and a new opportunity for hearing on the smaller. You may hear things either way. You may hear, if you do that, no, I wish I had an opportunity to say I wanted all 28 acres. That's why I didn't come forward, because I was satisfied, or I think that's too small, or, so it would require a new procedure.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
would it be appropriate to define what we think is smaller scale? That sounds rather vague, and they might come back and think 11 acres is okay, and then we go right back through the same process.
Before we do that, would it be appropriate to ask the gentleman if he's got an idea?
Sure. You may do that.
Yeah, as far as just the size.
But to answer your question, yes, I think in
Yes.
discussion, you could send that word back.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and Commissioners. And I do need to know smaller scale, because I think James's smaller scale is less than 20% of what we're asking for now. That's, in my opinion, what is going to control if this is a valid request. If it's zone commercial, no matter if it's 28 or 2.8, if the need is there, that is what's going to satisfy if the zoning was right. If not, it's going to just be soybeans. So there's no harm. There is absolutely no harm. The need that we think is there is going to fill the zoning up. It's going to fill that soybean field up. So for me to come back with I said it would be remorse to think that, if y'all are willing to, accommodate a lesser, I mean, of course, I think we're a foregone conclusion. You need to act on this, the motion on the table and the request. But if I'm sending the message, or if James is sending the message to come back with 5 acres, that's gonna be a shot in the gut.
But I think that's why we're asking,
Yeah.
do you have
No,
a
so
number?
I would think half is a reasonable compromise.
Okay, I think that answers
Okay,
our
all right,
question.
okay,
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
Okay, Ann, I have you down next. Okay.
James, I think he wants to speak.
I just there is
Okay.
another possible
Okay.
alternative here, and I think it would suit everyone a lot better, including Commissioner Perkins Williams. What staff has recommended in the past, especially in these cases where we're not really sure what's going in and when it might be, how much parking there might be, all those sorts of things, we bring before you a lot of times conditional district rezonings. You know exactly what's going in there. You can ask that question. You see the site plan. You know how much screening, buffering, all those things are considered at the time that site plan comes in for conditional district rezoning versus our standard, what we're dealing with this morning, a general commercial rezoning straight out. That is yet another one. If there's that much demand and there are going to be commercial operations going in soon, you could get those site-specific plans coming before you, and you could decide on setback, screening, and any other thing you want to consider then.
Does that cost the landowner, the developer, more money? 'Cause, that's what my concern was. Does it cost the developer? I want to encourage those private owners to do some development, look for places to do commercial development. And you said something about changing something in the law with the whatever that you would have to rework. Is that difficult? Changing the plan, land use plan, is that difficult? See, this is the first commercial development that I've sat on this board with that we've been faced with. And to not encourage developers to develop commercial property really hurts me dearly.
We
And
have
it
had
hurts
other
the
commercial
residents as well.
rezonings, but those were in areas that were already designated as commercial.
Commercial.
So we didn't have to change anything.
So you don't have to cost him anymore to do anything.
No, to answer your first question, yes, it's gonna cost more. He's got to develop site-specific plans through Mr. Baldwin or whomever. So yes, those applications would come in separately for the individual commercial operations. It would cost more, but you know exactly what you're getting in there. Another alternative.
Okay, Ann, did you finish?
Um,
And we
yes.
have a motion?
Yes, so you have a motion on the floor, made by Ann, seconded by Commissioner White to deny, and then make a request to let the landowner know that he can bring back an alternate application.
Okay,
It still stand.
Now, voting yes for this motion, Madam Attorney, means,
It means that you will adopt the consistency statement of the planning board, finding this use to be inconsistent, and it will deny the request, and then the applicant will have an opportunity to bring back a modified request going forward that would run through the planning board and come back to this board for consideration at a later date, as early as September.
Okay.
And I think that the applicant was in agreement to do that, to bring it back.
that's not encouraging, that's
All
not
right.
encouraging.
The applicant's engineer believed it
but
was
he
reasonable.
says he's willing to do that.
We just don't want a conditional use. We can't advertise the property for commercial zoning if we have a conditional use. So that pigeonholes us.
I want to
Well,
encourage
Okay,
development.
just a minute. Yes, Ms. Hagan.
If we go with the motion that's on the floor, that is not a conditional,
Correct.
correct?
Okay. Okay,
Okay.
I got you. Okay, let's vote, please. Okay, thank you very much, and we'll look forward to hearing from you
Yes.
again. Thank you.
No, they're not gonna support development in the district.
Okay,
They don't go there.
next,
She lives within a whole, 1 mile of where she lives. No,
yes, employees.
This board
Thank
is
you
very
for sitting
biased.
patiently. That was a long, first item on our agenda, and we will, go forward
to know.
to, do we need
it's
a
very
motion?
biased,
We don't
and that's
do-
what I'm gonna tell the district.
No, we
no,
don't
you
have to
don't.
make a motion.
I'm gonna tell the that this board is very biased when it comes down to commercial development in our district. That's why we don't have it. That's why we don't have it, because you got a bunch of people sitting up here who are biased.
And
All of them drive 1 mile and get to anything.
that's why I said all that, to let them know that, I'm sensitive to your area.
Get up here.
I'm serious, you don't know how it is.
Oh, we
You
spent
have
too
to
much
drive
time
10
on that.
miles, everything.
Yes,
And then you're
please.
discouraging the
Well, good morning. Once again, we are on a quarterly basis recognizing the workforce of Pitt County government in terms of employee service awards. And we do this in a 5-year increment, beginning with the 5-year awards, and this year working up to 30-year awards. So as I call your name, we'll hold applause until the end of each grouping. So the first grouping, we have Marisol Barr, Social Services.
If you'll come right up here. Congratulations. Thank you for working with us.
Justin Best, Sheriff's Department, Sheriff's Office.
Congratulations. Thank you for what you do.
Jason Collins, Sheriff's Office. Candace Dearman, Public Health.
Congratulations, Candace. Thank you very much.
Amanda Garcia, Social Services. Minnie Horlano, Social Services. Leslie Jackson, Sheriff's Office. And our last 5-year recipient, Terry Quinn, is unable to attend, but there with public health.
If we'll give those people a hand.
10 years, Angela Armstrong, Social Services.
Here she comes. Congratulations, Angela. Thank you very much. You look beautiful today.
Thomas Corporu, Detention Center.
Congratulations, Thomas. Thank you very much.
William Cowley, Detention Center.
Here he comes. Congratulations. Thank you very much for your service.
Charles Kraft, Detention Center.
Hey, how are you, Charles? Congratulations. Thank you.
William Early, Detention Center.
Here he comes.
We have a lot of detention.
We do.
They're all detention coming down.
Yeah. Is anybody covering the house? Congratulations. Thank you so much.
Purnell Elliott, Detention Center.
We had a run 10 years ago, I guess, on hiring. Thank you so much for what you do. Congratulations.
Ross Krager, Detention Center.
And we really do appreciate you coming on this day because we think this is very important that we recognize you all. Thank you so much.
Ronnie Steps, Detention Center.
You'll see that every election.
Congratulations, Ronnie. Thank you very much for what you do.
And our last 10-year to Detention Center recipient, again, is to Christopher Woolard.
Congratulations. Thank you for being here.
All right, applause. All right, within 15-year category, we have 3 employees. Pam Davis, Management Information Systems, MIS, not here this morning, okay. Kathy Dixon, Public Health.
Here she comes. Thank you. Congratulations, Kathy. Thank you very much.
And our last 15 years is Miter Nelson, Social Services.
How are you? Good to see you. Thank you so much for what you do.
All right, applause. In our next category, 20 years, we have 6 employees who are receiving a 20-year awards, and as normal, they receive the silver box plus their certificate plus the pen, and the box represents a watch they've picked out at their 20th anniversary, 20th mark on the calendar with Pitt County government. So we'll call Timothy Daughtery, Sheriff's Department.
Congratulations, Timothy. Thank you very much for your service. Stick with us now.
Teresa Fleming, Social Services.
Hello. Thank you so much for what you do. Congratulations.
Chris McDaniel, Financial Services.
What? Congratulations, Chris. Thank you so much.
Wileen Peel, Detention Center. Willie, I had it right the first time.
Hey, give me 5. I think that's the
Yeah,
first time
yeah.
it's gone, actually. Congratulations. Thank you so much for what you do.
Brandon Speller, Sheriff's Office. Okay. And our last 20 years to Kenneth Waters, Sheriff's Office.
Congratulations, Kenneth. Thank you very much for what you do.
All right. Again, we have 6 employees in the next category for 25 years. Teresa Braxton, Social Services. Allison Canfield, Social Services.
Congratulations, Allison. Thank you.
Sam Coburn, Pitt Area Transit, PATS. Charles Coburn. Sam Coburn.
You lost your congratulations. Congratulations, Ken. Thank you very much.
Timothy McDaniels, Buildings and Grounds. Tim McDaniels.
Tim, congratulations. Thank you very much. Appreciate your help.
Angela Hart, Social Services.
Hey, Angela, how are you? Congratulations.
And our last 25 years, Ren Locke, Buildings and Grounds. Mr. Locke here this morning? Okay. We have one, yes.
Yep.
Bob? One recognition in the 30-year category, and that is to Marvis Evans, Social Services. If she'll come forward.
She's got the biggest spring in her step, too, I think. Congratulations. Thank you so much.
Thank you as well.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's it.
Okay. Thank you all for your service and for staying with us, and we always look forward to this. We have a reception in the back if you'll go in this door and come out this side, and if we'll let our recipients kind of head in first, and everybody else is invited. So we'll wait and get started. Thank you very much.
The meeting will resume in 1 minute. The meeting will resume in 30 seconds. The meeting will resume in 10 seconds.
I'd been ready to have been buried. Are we on?
Let's see.
Welcome back after our break. We have our public addresses to the board next.
And Madam Chair, we have no one signed up unless there's somebody in the audience who would like to come forward and speak.
Okay, all right. And next, we have our items for report. And Bill Hopper and Scott Elliott, if you'll come forward to the mic
Yes, Mr. Hopper is going to
with
provide
our
this
Pitt-Greenville Airport.
presentation this morning.
Give a
And,
presentation. Thank you for being here.
I'd be happy to provide any board members with it afterward.
That'll
but I'll
be
just
fine.
pretty much just speak to it, so.
Okay.
All righty. Thank you. First of all, I just want to thank you, the board, and for allowing me to speak with you today. We have some great opportunities at Pitt-Greenville Airport. There is what they call a Small Community Air Service Development Program grant. I know that these have been done in the past. It's a grant that is offered through the United States Department of Transportation, where what they're trying to do is to try to encourage air service in small communities, much like Pitt-Greenville. And we have and I know we've applied for them in the past. We have not received these grants. However, one of the big differences that we have this time that we haven't had in the past is that we actually have a letter of support from an airline. The information about that airline is confidential. I can say that it's a major hub and a legacy, a major carrier, and into the Washington, D.C. area. There's a lot of connectivity that we would have through this. It would have to do with, it would have especially the international connections. First of all, I just want to say American Airlines is a fantastic carrier. We're very happy to have them here in this community. However, Charlotte does not have a lot of the international connectivity that a lot of the businesses in this area really look to. And the carrier that we're looking at has some very significant international connectivity, especially to Asia and into Europe. So we're very excited at this opportunity. What we're doing is we've been meeting with various community members to go over, because what the Department of Transportation likes to see when they, in awarding these grants, is they like to see participation from the community. These are more to spur activity in the small communities, and they like to see that the community has, what they like to call skin in the game. And so we have been going around to a number of the community. We had a meeting with Mr. Elliott as well as Ms. Wall and a couple of other members in looking for the support that we need to get. What the grant that we're looking for is a $750,000 grant is what we'll be requesting. And we are looking, and the airport itself would contribute $100,000 to it, which would be more in the area of marketing. The airport cannot provide revenue guarantees to an airline because that's considered subsidizing an airline, which goes against our grant assurances. So what the Department of Transportation looks to is for us to look to the community for those. And so we are looking for, we're looking at around $250,000 to $300,000 from the local community. And we use $650,000 of that $750,000 grant to do what we call revenue guarantees, which basically is paying for seats that aren't filled. Early on, whenever an airline comes to a new market, they take on a lot of risk. And typically, they don't experience, they don't meet revenue targets that they look for. And this mitigates a lot of that risk. And the intention would be that early on they would most likely have to use some of those revenue guarantees. However, as they get into the service, the less and less is what we anticipate they would be needing. And any money that is not used of the revenue would be given back to the contributors. First of all, the revenue guarantees are not intended to maximize the profits of the airline. They're more to mitigate the risk associated with providing air service. So it's not something where they take the money and run, because an airline is not going to come into provide service to an airport without the potential of being successful. And so we are the risk, I guess, associated with like them taking the money and running is not a great risk. It's not something that they would do, because it does cost them a lot of money to come in and begin service. We anticipate that to provide the service would cost the airline $3 million a year. And so that's the risk that they'd be taking on. And typically they like to get around a third of that covered. This is a little bit less than that, of course. We'd be around $1.27 million when you take in the rent breaks that we would be giving them, which is very typical, the revenue guarantees, as well as the marketing effort. As far as what we'd probably be looking at, it's not something that there's no guarantees that the airline would come in here. This is just more of them saying that they see the potential success that they could get from operating out of Pitt-Greenville, and that they are very interested in providing the service. If they don't come in, or it could be another carrier as well, that would provide whatever we specify. What we are going to specify in the grant application is that we are looking for a major hub in the Washington, D.C. area with great connections to the hub, as well as international connectivity. That's what's very important to us, that we see as far as what the business community and also what the community in general needs at Pitt-Greenville Airport. We have done studies on what type of passenger demand there is in this area. We have 511 passengers a day that are in what we call our catchment area. And of those 511 a day, approximately 200 are flying out of Pitt-Greenville Airport. The other, like over 90% of the 300 left over are going to Raleigh-Durham, and also New Bern, Jacksonville, a few other places. So the demand is there, and what we'd be looking for is 2 flights a day into a Washington, D.C. area hub with 50 passenger aircraft. Even if we filled up those aircraft, it would mean 100 passengers a day. So we're not looking to take a large portion. What we're trying to do is build up the activity here and get some competition, because competition could translate into better reliability as well as more options. And just the options available, the one-stop connections that we'd be increasing. There's around 70 one-stop connections through this Washington, D.C. hub as well. With that, I'd entertain any questions, or if Mr. Elliott, if you had any more you wanted to add to it.
Do you want to add any comment about the letter of support that we got this time compared to years past and efforts we've had? Maybe you hit that, I can't recall.
Yeah, what I'd like to get, if it would be a letter of support from the county.
Or even the letter of support we have from a unnamed airline, that's a piece,
Exactly.
key application we have not had in the past.
And I can provide you with the template for it, and it would be an unnamed airline. It would just be a letter of support, supporting the service.
I think my point is, this is the first time we've had a particular airline as part of our grant application to the federal government for this grant that is actually going to say that their intention would be to come to PGV. We've never had this in the past.
That's gone one
Right.
step further than
Right.
we have ever
This
been
is-
in the past, and I think that the
Yes, my point.
manager just wants the commissioners just to know that, not what step or who they are or anything.
Right, exactly.
It's good news.
Yeah,
to
this
us.
is about as good as it gets. All the the I's are dotted, T's are crossed. This was the one thing that was missing. If we get the community support, we go forward. This is just an excellent opportunity, and just my own personal take on this. This is one that when I took this job, I was very excited about, because the potential here in this area is great, and it's a very underserved market, and a very exciting time, I think, to try to get this service.
Good. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments?
Can I add just one comment? The Pitt County Development Commission has budgeted funds for years now, has set aside for, I think, $50,000 towards this purpose, so they'll be asked to, again, considering, it's already allocated in their budget yearly, to put that up in this effort.
Yes, and we have received a letter of support from the PCDC.
Okay.
And actually, from quite a few members. The reaction has been fantastic, and we're very excited.
Good. We are too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, Cam Coburn with the Pitt Area Transit System with a report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for allowing me to come and share just a few minutes the good things that the Pitt Area Transit System is doing. Sorry. So what is PATS? It's a community transportation system here, obviously in Pitt County. One thing that a lot of the folks do not realize, and the citizens of our county, that we are open to all of general public. We are a demand response directly operated coordinated transportation system. We also serve as the paratransit unit for the Great Bus System for the city of Greenville. We are not a charter system, meaning that a citizen cannot call and reserve a bus, say, for an ECU football game for their own personal and private use, as that would be a violation of the federal funding that we receive. So demand response directly operated means that we do go as a curb-to-curb service. We pick the client up and provide services in a coordinated fashion as they are scheduled, typically the day before, business day before. This is our mission statement. Obviously, we strive to provide safe, reliable, cost-effective transportation to access necessary medical care and other essential resources, but not limited to medical transportation. This is our organizational chart. We, obviously, the citizens ultimately govern us all. You all as the county commissioners, county manager, deputy county manager, and then myself working with oversight of the Transportation Advisory Board. We operate on two major grants for funding from the federal and state government. The first being an administrative grant, which is an 80% federal, 5% state with a 15%, and it has been county matched, and I'll touch a little bit more on that shortly. And on the capital side, 80% federal, 10% state, and a 10% county or local match. We also receive, the acronym is officially called ROPE, but it's the Rural Operation Assistance Program, and those are broken down into three categories. The first being EdTap, which is focused on the elderly and disabled transportation services, also employment transportation, and what we call RGP, or the Rural General Public, which is the public can schedule rides within the county for various needs that maybe don't fall into those other categories. Here's our staff. Myself, we have 3 part-time clerks, a scheduler dispatcher. We also have a vehicle maintenance driver training officer that's full-time. We have 5 full-time drivers, 38 part-time drivers. We operate with 20 vehicles total, 4 of those being conversion, and 16 lift-equipped conversion to meet the ADA requirements. We typically take requests between 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. Monday through Friday, and the reason for 2 p.m. is to allow the schedule to be generated so that we can make the most efficient services for the next business day. We operate Monday through Saturday, typically 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., sometimes earlier times depending on contracted scheduling needs and dialysis transports and things of that nature. We typically do not operate on holidays, exception obviously for critical dialysis patients and the federal guidelines that govern us and mandate us to follow with the urban paratransit requirement from the city of Greenville. We are governed and approved for services that warrant $1.90 per mile for contracted services with human service agencies. The Medicaid is the $1.90. It's a straight mileage, and that was approved, I think, just a year ago through our DSS services. The other human services agencies operate in a coordinated fashion, which means the more the vehicle is loaded, the lower the cost will be for those human service agencies, so they share that cost per mile. $7 per trip for RGP. That's a fare-based self-schedule mechanism where the rider that just needs transportation for whatever purposes can utilize that. If you're an urban paratransit rider, which means you cannot access the bus stops in the city of Greenville, according to the American Disabilities Act, we come and provide that curb-to-curb service at a cost of $2 per trip, with the remainder of the trip cost being subsidized by the city of Greenville, and that meets that ADA requirement for the city of Greenville. And obviously we use elderly and disabled funds that exist to help subsidize trips for those populations. This information has been provided by the Institutional Transportation Research up at NC State University, and according to their formulas and calculations, Pitt area transit was statewide $2.04 million of business output, $785,000 annual benefit of having a transit option in North Carolina communities. Some of the highlights and successes overall is public transportation provides economic benefits to communities, health benefits, access to work, education, training, medical transportation, shopping and tourism. It reduces individual transportation costs, congestions and delays, road constructions and maintenance. Transit funding, it's calculated that every $1 the state of North Carolina invests in transit generates approximately $6 of total investment in North Carolina from federal, state, and local sources. Here in Pitt County, more than 23 jobs are supported by transit system operations and capital investments, which result in approximately $954,000 in wages. We anticipate that figure to expand in the coming years. Just some operational goals that we have in fiscal year 1920, which is upon us now, obviously to continue to increase ridership, which we have been doing for the past few funding cycles, obviously to reach out more in the marketing and advertising. We've been doing some of that. Now we're looking to possibly partner with some of our local media networks and work in conjunction with our public information office in developing a PATS commercial to air on some of those local stations. And that would be through grant funding advertisement that we receive. Overall, approximately the past 3 to 4 funding cycles, we've seen an overall 30% increase in ridership. The overall efficiency has improved. Those operational costs per mile are listed from fiscal year 15 on. There's a slight increase in FY18 from 17, but I just want to point out that obviously we had rising fuel costs, and then we made a significant investment back into the system of some software that has, I believe, will pay dividends and already has since we've installed that for years to come. And that's the next bullet point is we have secured new software system which helps us with our billing, GPS tracking, auto scheduling, and calling ahead to the client, which has been a huge value for customer service. We have implemented the radio system changeover to the county, so we are part of that network now. We've replaced 65% of our fleet over these past 2 fiscal cycles, and obviously we've seen a job growth we probably employ we're knocking on the door right now with 50 people, and this summer we'll probably reach that by summer's end. We've assisted very proudly with the EOC with support in Hurricane Matthew and Florence with evacuations, special needs populations, transportation of meals, and logistical support. We've also recently partnered with Pitt Community College to increase our services with their students with disabilities so that they can have access transportation to and from campus and to their homes. We've participated in a compliance review, and this past year we went from being, I would say, close to the bottom tier of the state a few years ago to no findings of deficiencies, one of the few state transit agencies on the first review from the federal and state folks that came down and helped participate in that. We feel like obviously we can always improve each and every day, but we feel more fiscally sound in our operations. And the county match that I referenced earlier with what the county funds have been given, we have gone from the county obviously sometimes subsidizing the cost of the transit system to the last 2 to 3 funding cycles where the county has provided the local match to the current fiscal year that we're in. We are actually providing the local match out of fund balance that we have helped to generate. So we're very proud that I know with a tough budget year that you all had that we were able to contribute that for the overall good of the county. State recognitions, the Public Information Office was just recently awarded this award for this conference room. You can see the photo of the work in progress. It's now a finished product, and that was a complete renovation and redesign of the boardroom. That was done with grant funds that were specifically earmarked for advertisement, so there were no county dollars used in that. And obviously we've increased our continuing education with safety being a big factor in today's world with transportation. Some of the future goals, if we continue to grow at the rate that we are growing, we may have to possibly explore the idea of fleet expansion through grant funding. Obviously, we want to continue to increase services and the efficiency in those services. Those boardroom training center, just one recent example, but further capital improvements. Increased role for input with NCDOT. We're actually participating in the procurement portion for the state as one of the local transit systems for camera systems that will be explored to enhance the fleet systems all across the state of North Carolina. So PATS will have some representation on that very soon. Obviously increase our collaborative partnerships with key stakeholders and the Transportation Leadership Development Program offered through NC State University. Looking forward to being a part of that as well. Obviously, we can't, it's almost impossible to get 50 people together. So this is maybe 40 to 50% of our workforce. And at this time, I know that was a mouthful, but I'll entertain any questions or comments that you may have.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody?
Yes. In my area, there are a lot of districts, a lot of subdivisions that have non-state, state identified.
State maintained road?
Yes, state maintained road. And there are problems with passability. How many rejections have you had to do because of those unmaintained subdivision or park streets? I think I asked the question so you know what I'm talking about.
I would have to,
The big holes in the road and the water is standing and you gotta call for somebody handicapped to take them to a doctor's appointment.
I'd have to consult with the staff to bring you back a definitive answer on that. I'd be glad to do that.
The reason I asked that question because I've heard a release of tension. I think that was a good way to put that, about being rejected and having to find another transportation, mode of transportation, because the bus didn't go down to pick up them at their residence.
Okay. I'll certainly consult with the staff and check.
And I can tell you what subdivision it was after the meeting.
Okay.
Okay, yes, Melvin?
I want to thank you, Kim, for your leadership. As I serve on this board, you have expanded the service to Ellis King Park, and that has really paid off tremendously, getting the elderly to the senior citizen activities over there. We certainly appreciate that, and we appreciate the transparency that you're providing for this board as we come in and see the things that you're doing in terms of making it known publicly. So again, thank you for what you do.
Thank you very much, Cam, for your report. Appreciate it. Excuse me.
Yes, just curious if you could help me understand your system as opposed to a system that we might develop down the road that would have regular bus service, say from Bethel, Belvoir to Alice Keene, and to connect us up to the hospital, the community college, a system that would be open to the public on general routes. Can you help me understand the difference in your system and how something like that would work?
So I think the example you provided is more of a fixed route service, so it's really just the difference in the type of funding federally. My best understanding is that's based on current numbers and to give you an example, Kinston in Lenoir County operates totally as we do on a demand response, directly operated, whether you're in the urban lines of Kinston or not. I know that they have examined Kinston to see if the numbers would be there to have a fixed route system, and they have not yet come to that conclusion that that is going to be the best in that area. So I would compare that in the same realm from community to community. State and federal government would first say, hey, we feel like the numbers are there, that we want to offer this funding to whoever it be, if it be Pitt County as the recipient, to begin fixed route service. Does that?
Yeah, that helps. I guess I'm not still sure that I understand. That would be something that y'all could do, or under this current system you can't because of the way that you're set up for your ridership. But I'm wondering also, how do you get that study going? And I'm also hearing that there was a time in Pitt County's past where there were discussions about merging our different public transportation systems, and that's kind of what I'm leading towards. When you're talking about ridership numbers, how about the city and the university and those kinds of entities helping out with these underdeveloped areas, like where I live and where Commissioner Perkins Williams's constituents live, and the lack of access to medical care and to the community college and to Alice Keene and the farmers market. So I'm curious, I'm trying to get a discussion going about this, and I know that it's a lot for you right now, but I'm trying, as the professional in this field, I'm just looking for some information that would help us figure out. Do we initiate that study? Is that something that you initiate? How do we as a group here start pushing this a little so that we can see if something like this might be doable?
Well, the county can always initiate, if it chooses to, a request. I can't speak for the state and the FTA on whether they would, how much or how fast that process could happen. Certainly, I'm here to help in any way that I can. As far as fixed route, I want to point out with the examples that you gave is that we're proud that we have expanded those things, access to the community college, medical care, senior citizen-type services and centers. In fact, I would say the Council on Aging is one of our largest clients on funding that they receive from the state. So, but we're set up, to answer your question, in that demand response directly operated mode, and so it would take the approval from the state and the federal in conjunction with the FTA to set up something different.
Okay, and I'm sort of mixing the questions here too. So in the second part of that, how about, were you around when I wasn't, when there apparently, or I wasn't paying attention, when this discussion fell apart about merging the different lines of transportation in the county? And do you have an opinion on how something like that discussion could be regenerated again?
I can't speak. I'm not aware of that conversation in my time serving with Pitt Area Transit.
Let me kind of interject. Probably 15 years ago, there was informal discussion about the PATH system, the GRATE system, the hospital transit system, the ECU transit system, all combining. And I think there was maybe territorial issues. There was issues with ECU in terms of their system was pretty much a student-ran system, and they could have leveraged 90% or 80%, whatever those numbers were, federal monies to pay for their buses, but they opted to pay for them 100% with local ECU funds because they didn't, I guess, they wanted to maintain their control of their system, which I think is still true today. The four different systems serve different purposes. Not to say that, I mean, I think it would take a type of consultant to come in to do a study to look at what is the demand. I do want to point out, probably 10 years ago, we did, via grant from NCDOT, have what we called an experimental deviated fixed route system. We had two fixed routes north of the river, one running from Bethel down to Greenville, and the other was in the further western portion of the north of the river area. Under the deviated fixed route, there was a fixed route that the bus would travel, but it could also deviate, I believe, half a mile off of that route to pick somebody up. The fares were like maybe $1 per trip. It was highly subsidized via the grant, but we found, and maybe it was not good enough marketing and publicity on it, but we didn't have the ridership on it to continue it. Once the grant ended, then we found that if the county were to pick it up, we didn't have enough ridership to justify the continuation of it. So that's one model that I think a consultant could look at, as well as what Commissioner Albright is proposing otherwise. But we would need more direction if this is something the board wanted to pursue.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions or comments, we'll move forward with the manager's report.
Okay, on my report, next meeting dates, August will be a regular meeting month, the first and third Monday, August 5th and 19th, at 9 o'clock and 6 p.m. meetings respectively. Item B, just to let the board know that we are closing on the Warren Farm acquisition this week, actually Wednesday, and that will be about 130-acre parcel of land adjacent to the Green Corporate Park that will be used for economic development purposes in terms of marketing it for new industry to locate in Pitt County. Did want to just, I guess, confirm with the board, whether formally or informally, via the past actions of the board, that you're authorizing me to be able to to execute all documents associated with the closing come Wednesday, along with the county attorney who will be a part of that closing. So I assume that authorization is provided.
Yes, we did but take a vote on that,
Okay.
so it's in place.
Item C.
Excited.
Okay. Item C, a couple of good news items to mention. On department head recruitments, we actually have 3 key department heads that we are or have recruited for. The first one is what the Pitt County Board of Public Health has recruited. If Dr. Silvernail will come forward, and Amy, can you come up to just for a second? Just want to recognize Amy, who's been the interim public health director for the past, 2, 3, 4 months. It's been 6. Oh my gosh,
You've done a
6
great
months.
job, too.
So
Thank you.
thank you, Amy, for your filling in while we didn't have a public health director. Dr. John Silvernail is coming from ECU Physicians to Pitt County, and he has a specialty areas when he was there of public health and occupational health, and looking forward to his work in the public health field on a county government level. And didn't know if Dr. Silvernail, you wanted to greet the board or say anything?
Good morning, Commissioners. Pleasure to be here. I thank you for the opportunity to serve in this role, and I look forward to continuing to serve the good people of Pitt County in this role going forward. And thank you.
Good.
Great.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
being here.
And another department head recruitment effort we've advertised and have interviewed for the position of Emergency Management Director. And if Randy Gentry, if you'll come forward. Randy Gentry, I'm sure is a familiar face you recognize in the public safety field. Mr. Gentry will be assuming the role of Emergency Management Director for Pitt County Government effective next Monday, Sunday, the 14th. And Randy has a long tenure and history with Pitt County from the public safety side. Randy, you want to say anything?
Just want to say thank you, and I look forward to the opportunity of serving Pitt County in this role and the continued good work that has been going on in emergency management and working with all the community partners. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And the last update would be regarding the position of Executive Director of the Development Commission. That is a position that has been posted and recruited for folks to apply for. That is closed. I think it closed on May 31st. The application has been screened by HR. There is a subcommittee of the Development Commission that has reviewed applications and will be conducting interviews later this month. And we are hopeful that by maybe by the first meeting in August, or possibly the second meeting in August, we can come back with a formal announcement of who will be in that position for the Executive Director of Pitt County's Development Commission. And I have one other good news item, and I don't want to steal the sheriff's thunder on this, but the sheriff's office Sheriff Dance has renegotiated the Fed bed rate with the U.S. Marshals Service, her office, and we're going up from $78 a day to $100 per day.
Yay.
That'll be effective in the fall. That'll be for a 36-month period contract. So she's done some very good work there, along with other county staff that have supported her effort in that, but we're pleased to report that. And Madam Chair, that's all I have.
Thank you very much. I'll entertain a motion to approve the items for consent.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. If you'll vote, please. Okay, and next, our items for decision. Kelly and Brad, if you'll come forward, please. Welcome to the podium.
All right. Get my presentation up. And let's see. Oops. Okay. This one. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Madam Chair and County Commissioners, good morning. I'm with the Pitt County Development Commission, and as County Manager Elliott just mentioned, that we will be closing on the 127-acre Warren Farm this Wednesday, and we want to immediately market this property for industrial development through all channels possible. One of the ways in which we can do that very effectively is to apply for NC Commerce site certification. And this certification will ensure that this property is shovel-ready, and it will ensure that it gets marketed through many channels on websites and in trade shows and different opportunities through NC Commerce and EDPNC, the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina. You're familiar with this property. It's 120 acres that are it's under contract. It's off of the US 264 bypass and is between Heister-Yale and Old Creek Road. It's 2 parcels that will be combined and has been rezoned for industrial development. You can see the view here from the bypass and just a panoramic view that shows the bypass to the east and west, and then the around to Old Creek Road, which goes backs into Green Corporate Park. The Certified Sites Program is basically industrial development is a process of elimination and risk mitigation. We've heard risk mitigation a couple of times today. When we have industrial prospects, they're looking to eliminate you, and they want to know that property is shovel-ready, ready to go. There's not going to be any issues in zoning. There won't be any surprises in findings of environmental concerns or other things there. So we actually have shown this property on multiple occasions and have several active projects looking at this property. We've done a lot of the due diligence, in fact, probably all of the due diligence that's necessary for the NC Commerce site certification, which is truly a rigorous study of the property. But basically, they're relying on us to provide all of these things, including Phase 1 environmental audits, geotechnical studies, topo analysis and maps, the photography that will show the property, the analysis of the utilities, and master planning alternatives, so complete information on the property in its entirety. And you see I've got a check mark beside all of those things because we have all of those things in place. So it's basically just packaging that information and submitting it. There's no application fee, and so that would just be a matter of submitting it for site certified site designation. The timing of this would be that the next opportunity to submit is August the 7th, to be reviewed on August the 28th by their committee. And then there's also another opportunity coming in late summer through Electricities. It's called their Smart Sites program. It's pretty much an identical study or rigorous study of the property. But again, that we would submit the same information, package it for the Smart Sites program. And again, it's another opportunity to get this property out there and marketed through Electricity's channels. They go to many trade shows, as does Commerce and EDPNC. So again, getting the property out there for industrial development and recruitment. And this is just an example of a master plan. Again, that's something they're looking for. There's definitely different alternatives we can do for this property, but we did do one for a particular active project. So again, we feel like this is a prime site for development. We don't have a huge arsenal of properties that are ready for development that are contiguous acres. So this 127 contiguous acre could be subdivided, but it could be one particular industrial project. And we would be putting this on our website as well as it would go on the state Select NC website. And it would, again, be marketed heavily by Smart Sites, by Electricities, and EDPNC as a certified site. And again, that does ensure that there is due diligence that's been done, and all these prospects are looking for that due diligence, their timing and their cost to be saved when they are looking for a prospective site. We've already put together an industrial property flyer that's going to be ready to go. We can just put in the stamp of certified site or smart site on this and just pop it right on our website as we need to, but we can put this out immediately when the sale is finalized. And we also have a mock-up of signage for this property that will be going up on a prominent visible area of this site. So we just asked respectfully that you provide a letter of support to be included in the packaging of the certified sites application.
Thank you. Nice presentation. It had been a while since we had seen all of that, so glad to see it. And we will certainly consider that if somebody will make a motion.
So moved.
Second.
So a motion to proceed and move forward, and it looks like you're ready. Let's vote, please. Thank you both for the job you're doing. Appreciate it. Okay. And next, Mr. Demery, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Morning, Madam Chair, members of the commission. Here before you, Central Carolina Holdings takes care of our tire recycling and disposal and has been since the early 90s. We have a long relationship, good relationship with them. Currently, we're under a 5-year contract that was approved by the board in April 2015. The current contract has a CPI increase, a yearly CPI increase, not to exceed 1.5%. They've approached and are asking for a 1.1%. So I'm here to ask for permission to allow them to increase our tire disposal rate to $77.46 a ton. I would like to say that we receive money back from the state to take care of our tire disposal. So no money comes, it just passes through my budget. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Okay. Questions or motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. We'll vote. Okay, thank you very much, Sean. Okay.
Got one
and
more
next-
item.
Excuse me?
I got one more
Are
item.
you next up?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, I hadn't looked that far ahead.
That's
There
all
you
right.
go.
Pitt County sends our municipal solid waste to Eastern Carolina Environmental, located in Bertie County. It's a private facility owned by Republic Services. The current contract has a clause to increase the rate annually based on Consumer Price Index for garbage and trash, and it's based on from December to the previous December. That CPI rate this past year is 7.1%. Once they sent me that notification, we sat down and talked and negotiated, and was able to lower that rate to 4.47. I've also asked them, and we have not met, we're going to look at that and see if we can put a cap on that as well, because I feel like 7.1% is fairly steep. But I knew that we were going up, so I did budget for an increase. So I'm here to ask that you authorize the county manager to execute the amendment to our contract, and our new rate will go to $35.95. Of that, $2 is a tax that we send to the state, and we get some of that tax money back through grants and some other revenue sources.
Is
Be
there a
glad
motion?
to answer any questions.
So move, but you said, I think it's up here, it said effective July 1st, so you're gonna be changing that to when?
They bill us in August for July. They bill us after the month's over. So they haven't billed us yet.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, please vote.
Thank
Is
you.
that it, John? Thank you. Okay, Mr. Rhodes?
You don't want to go back through the rezoning again, do you?
She did get that off, didn't she?
Good morning again. We're halfway through 2019, so we're getting closer to Census Day 2020, April 1st to be exact. So our office, the planning staff, as well as the public information office, has started our getting thoughts together about our marketing campaign for Census 2020. Hey, we've gotten a lot of good press or bad press, whatever way you want to look at it, already in the news. So a lot of people know that Census Day is coming. We're going to be responsible for trying to make sure people fill out their census forms and making sure, since this is the first time it'll be offered online, that people know how to do that process as well. So we're involving a lot of different folks in this. So since we were here in April, we've gone about recruiting people for our complete count committee. We've also attended a census training session. A lot of good information is floating around already, and we even were invited and presented at the State Complete Count Committee when they met here at East Carolina University last month. So learned a lot of good stuff at the state level when we were there. So why is all this really important, especially for Pitt County? It comes down to money. We're estimating what the numbers we've seen, anytime that we have an uncounted individual, that accounts for about $1,600 that may be lost here through federal grants and so forth. It's very important that we increase our response rates. So, along that vein, we're having our first kickoff meeting with our Complete Count Committee next week on the 16th. It'll be at the Alice F. Keene Park there at the Community Schools and Recreation Building. And again, we're trying to promote this, make sure that people understand when it's coming about. And if there are issues, we don't know which questions might be on the form quite yet, but they're being printed probably within the next month or so. So we'll be up to date with our census colleagues to make sure that we're advising people the best we can. So we have a couple of recommendations today. First, having a commissioner to serve on our Complete Count Committee. And also there's a resolution within your package today to support the census as well as our Complete Count Committee. So, one final note. We just got word too that our local regional census office will be opening here very soon. The location, it was just posted over the weekend, I believe, is near the Goodwill organization there right at the corner of Red Banks and Arlington Boulevard. So we'll be bringing you more information about that, phone numbers such as that. So 2 items for your consideration today, Madam Chair.
Okay. I was asked as chair to recommend a commissioner, and I recommended Melvin McLaughlin. Do we need to vote on him? And he accepted. He has done this in the past, correct?
That's right.
Melvin?
Yes.
So we need to approve that and endorse the resolution. Can I entertain a motion for both?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I will.
So moved.
Okay, Lauren, and you seconding? Okay. Let's vote.
Thank you.
Okay, you're good to go. Thank you. Okay. Chauncey Congleton, hi, how are you? Come forward, please.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Chief Congleton with the Sheriff's Office. I am here this morning to request a approval for the Year 7 BAC grant from the Governor's Highway Safety Commission.
Okay. Any questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, let's vote.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
Chris said he was in favor of it. Can I go ahead and
Sure.
do it for him?
First time he asked. You could have done that without asking, Tom, but thank you. Okay, it passes. Thank you very much. And we have to elect a voting delegate for NACo.
Actually, this is the first one's NCACC. Item 6, NACo's the second one.
Okay, I was moving right along, which doesn't seem to be helping with
So
the
the-
plot.
So the NCACC conference is the one in Guilford County, and Madam Clerk, which commissioners do we have attending? It may be in the
White,
abstract.
McLaughlin, and Perkins-Williams.
Okay.
Hogan, which one are we talking about?
This
And we
is-
registered you Friday, yes, and Huggins-Williams. I'm
Okay.
sorry, Huggins.
So this
Floyd
is the
Huggins.
state,
So we have 4. This is the one in Guilford.
Guilford County. This is the state
Correct.
meeting.
So
Okay.
White, McLaughlin, Perkins-Williams, and Floyd Huggins.
Okay, is there a
Motion to nominate Floyd Huggins, please.
Okay. There's a motion. Any other nominations? All right, let's vote, please.
This is for the voting delegate.
Okay. And next is Scott, you want to do that one too?
Yes, on item 7, the NACo voting delegate, you previously took action on this for the National Association of Counties Conference coming up this month. Commissioner Colson was going to serve in that role, but wasn't able to attend the conference. So now we need an alternate, and you have Vice Chairman McLaughlin, and Commissioner Huggins attending. So if you could appoint one of those two to be the voting delegate for Pitt County.
Okay. Is there a recommendation or nomination?
Okay.
Nominate Commissioner Huggins for that, please.
Okay. Second? Anybody?
Second.
Okay. Let's vote, please. Those are pretty involved jobs at a convention, state or national, so, Ann, thank you for being willing to serve. Okay, we're starting now with our appointments and reappointments to boards. Mr. Elliott?
Sure. Item 9 is the item that you've deferred back to the Development Commission, so we'll go to item number 10, that it's appointments to the Pitt County Farm and Food Council. And on that one, on page 116, you get a recommendation by Lee Guth, the director, to appoint Ms. Carnia DeRoche.
Do we have this one?
I'm sorry, you're correct, I skipped one. I'm getting ahead of myself.
It's okay.
We'll go back to item number 8, the Board of
Welcome
Health.
to the club.
Page 85, I'm sorry. On page 85, you have a series of names. You have a Dr. Scott McIntosh is being recommended to replace Dr. Lady Aycock. You have a Miss Kelly Pack Smith being recommended to replace Mr. Porter Stokes. And then you have also being recommended to reappoint Nitesh Patidar as a pharmacist, and to appoint Tina Dixon, which will be an exception to your appointment policy because she's served the maximum number of terms.
I have a question.
Okay, and just one thing before that, many of these boards, they have to be specific types of people and have to represent specific types of people, and that's a lot of these who are nominated. Okay, Ms. Perkins-Williams?
Who was on this for recommendation from District 2? I was looking at.
Which item for the Board of Health?
For the 85. I got a little.
Madam Clerk, can you clarify? I
Are you
don't
asking
believe-
who currently serves from District 2?
These are per a specific seat, like a
Specific
pharmacist,
seats.
doctor.
So as of right now, it looks like we have one
Okay.
Representative Rex Fleming.
Specific seat, move approval.
Okay. We have a motion for approval. Second?
Second.
Let's vote. Okay, next.
Okay, item 10, the Pitt County Farm and Food Council. Again, you have a recommendation for Ms. Carnia DeRoche to be appointed to the Farm and Food Council.
Okay, is there a motion?
So moved.
A second?
This is for
Okay.
10.
Let's vote.
Yes.
Okay, we tabled that one, didn't
Okay, Scott?
Number 11, appointments to the Greenville Planning and Zoning Board. These are ETJ appointments. These are folks to represent the extraterritorial jurisdiction on their board. On this, there's not a recommendation for a specific person, but you do have a list of interested applicants as part of your packet. And I believe it may be applicant willingness to Brad Guth and Stephen Atkinson.
Is there anyone who would like to nominate one of those or postpone it or what? Motion?
Motion to
To appoint
Atkinson.
Stephen Atkinson? Okay.
You actually need two, but you can do one at a time if you want.
Okay, do you want to do both? Amy?
Yeah, both of them.
Okay. And the other one is Brad Good.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Move to appoint both of them.
Okey-doke.
And one of them is an alternate ETJ seat,
Mhm.
and the other must be a regular seat.
Atkinson as the regular.
Atkinson is the regular, and the other one is the alternate. Is that clear, everybody? Okay, let's vote.
Let me make sure I got that right. So that's Stephen Atkinson to the regular seat and the Guth gentleman to the alternate ETJ seat?
Correct. Okay, next.
Next, you're on item number 12, the Greenville Board of Adjustment, page 135. You have one person there, a reappointment of Stephen Atkinson.
Okay, is there a motion?
So move.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, let's vote. This is a reappointment. And the next one is a reappointment.
Right, the next one, number 13, reappointment to the EMS Oversight Committee. A recommendation from the Oversight Committee to reappoint Charles Mayo. And again, this will be an exception since he has served the maximum number of terms per your policy.
So move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. For vote, please. Mel.
Go home.
Okay, that's it for the appointments and reappointments. Okay, we need to go into closed session. Do you need to send us first before we vote?
I do. It has been suggested that this board go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A3 to consult with an attorney employed by the public body in order to preserve that attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the public body, and also under 143-318.11A1 to prevent the disclosure of information that is confidential on attorney-client privilege. And we intend to discuss the lawsuit of UNC versus Biden.
Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to go into closed session and a second. Let's vote, please. Again, while we're getting ready,
It shouldn't be long.
we've got 2 minutes. Anybody who needs a break besides me?
The meeting will resume in 30 seconds. The meeting will resume in 10 seconds.
Welcome back after our closed session. I think we have one motion.
I make a motion to approve the closed session, the content of the closed session minutes from June 17th.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, let's vote. Okay, that's approved, and we'll start down here with you, Mr. Colson. Comments?
No comment.
I'm gonna wait till later, at the end.
I would like to thank the CMF's Alumni Association for nominating me and selecting me to be the ELPS Alumni, Outstanding Alumni of the Year for 2019.
Congratulations, Jay.
I like to congratulate, I don't think they're here, Randy for being appointed to head up the EMS. Also congratulate Dr. Silverman as the new director, and thank what was the other young lady that was an interim for 6 months?
Amy
Oh, yes.
Yeah, to thank her for her service.
Yes.
For 6
She
months.
did a great job.
Silly.
Okay, Mike?
Okay.
Lauren?
I would just like to wish Commissioner Fitzpatrick a happy birthday.
Yes, happy birthday. A motion for adjournment?
I like
Make a
to
motion.
say that today, District 2, I want them to know that the meeting was one of the first that we had for commercial development in our area. And I want you to know that I looked at the 2030 comprehensive planning document and found items of objectivity for the planning of development in our area. And I did find 4 that would benefit development as it relates. I've expressed your interest and concern that we do want development, and unfortunately, this board did not concur with that effort. But I would like to say to any private developer or anyone, we do want and welcome your commercial development. And we want you to look for those areas, and we realize that you are limited in places that you can develop due to flooding and other issues. But we need it. We are a poor district, and our residents deserve a better quality of life. And it is unfortunate that I get the impression that it is not something that we like to look at. But as a whole, I think this board needs to start looking at how you can address that, what did I call it, lopsided commercial development, and address it in a positive manner so that we too may feel that we are included in commercial development. Thank you. Those are my comments.
Did I get a second to the,
And second.
okay, all in favor, please vote for adjournment.